Hello, I'm Jules, and I'm going to just give you a very brief overview of what we're doing in education, a little bit about why we're doing it, and a bit of my perspective about our work and what's really interesting me. And I hope you enjoy it. I hope it's informative, and keep the conversation going, and come and have more dialogues about our education work and what it's about. When we think about education, we tend to think about schools, universities, teachers, and all of those contexts help to inform how we think, our habits of thought, and in turn those affect the actions that we take and the world that we create. The linear economy was created by how people were thinking, and it's the thinking that has informed the reality. If we're trying to change the reality, we need to change how people think. And that starts with education. And those formal education contexts, those schools that we've been to, those university learning spaces, and those educators who've helped inform the way that we think, is a great starting point for us. And that's an area that we do a lot of work in. We do a lot of work in schools. That's about legacy. It's a longer term investment in future leaders, informing how young people think and inspiring them to see their own part in a new trajectory, a new direction of travel. And that work is ongoing, and it's a longer term investment for us as an organisation. The work with universities is much more about how we're informing the people who are coming into the workplace, those new perspectives that are coming in and informing how organisations function, shaping the direction that organisations take in a more immediate way. And then, of course, in professional development, which is the now, it's about how professionals are applying the circular economy to their own context. And in universities, whether it's our MBA program, our MSc, or smaller minors, or the fellowship program that we run, all of those help to provide a context for learners to use the circular economy framework and apply it to their own disciplines. And in professional development, again with the e-learning program, that's about trying to empower people to think, okay, so what is the circular economy about, and what does it mean for me in supply chain management? What does it mean for me as a designer? What does it mean for me as a marketeer? And it's that application of the thinking to their own context again and again and again, that repetition, which really helps people to do things differently to how they've been done to date, and to ultimately shift the trajectory of the economy to one that is more restorative and regenerative. So that continuum, if you think of it like that learning from schools, universities, and in professional development is quite comprehensively covered in our work. But then you've also got to think, okay, so education's changing, how we all learn is changing, and so much of our learning happens outside of those formal environments. We learn through social environments with our family, we learn through our own self-directed journeys of curiosity. And that's developing a lot, primarily through digital technology, so the rise of massive open online courses, the rise of more of the informal education sector, where people are not paying extortionate amounts of money for university degrees because it doesn't necessarily buy them a career path anymore. That kind of social contract has been broken. People are exploring different ways of empowering themselves and enabling themselves to get into the workplace and get into the economy in a more self-directed way. And how that's done from a digital technology perspective is really being caught up with education. Education as a sector is pretty slow to move. It doesn't innovate quickly. If you just look at it over the last 200 years, the forms of education, the formats of education haven't changed a great deal. We still have this very batch production based model of creating learning environments where we try and feed information into people, and we then test to see if they've retained that given knowledge. And that whole format is being challenged quite a lot now, and we want to be part of that challenge. We want to be part of the thinking that informs the direction of travel for education itself. And so that's the role of our informal education work. So there are these kind of parallel tracks going on with building credible networks with the leading universities, with the institutions like the International Baccalaureate, who have credibility within the sector, and who can help inform the thinking, and actually, when it comes to applying this, actually testing it, see what it looks like. What does effective teaching and learning for a circular economy really look like? And that gives us that capability. But then the informal work with something like the Disruptive Innovation Festival is also great at pushing us to learn how things can be done differently. And my particular interest in this, I think we talk about systems thinking quite a lot. And for me, if you look, a system is just a collection of parts that are interconnected. Systems thinking is to be able to see the whole, to see the big picture, but then also to be able to see a focused view, go in deep, and to be able to move between those two with agility, to be able to understand the relationships between agents within a system. How are the parts within the system influencing one another, and how can those influences be affected to shift the system as a whole? For me, that's what systems thinking is about. And if people are able to do that more comprehensively, to find those intervention points, then we're much more capable of creating systemic change and getting to the root of the issues around the transition to a circular economy. We also talk about interdisciplinary learning a lot. So why is that important? For me, if you think about the benefit of getting a designer to sit with an engineer, to sit with a chemist, to sit with somebody who has a business background, and to have different perspectives, because they have different educational backgrounds, they think differently. And that diversity of thinking creates friction, it creates challenge. And although it is challenging working in interdisciplinary teams because we're not all agreeing with one another, it is, I think, where the fertile ground is for innovation. It's where new ideas come from because of that creative friction. And so I think it's really important to kind of go through a pain barrier a little bit with interdisciplinary teams in order to create that fertile ground for innovation and new thinking, new ways of doing stuff. I also wanted to touch on the fact that systems thinking applied to organisations is really what a learning organisation is about, and I'm quite passionate about that within our culture at the Foundation. I think that whether it's our own personal mastery of topics or our collective shared vision around what we're doing and why we're doing it, our role in cultivating this culture of being a learning organisation is fundamental to our growth and to our impact. And so that's another piece that I think is really interesting for us to consider as individuals and collectively, of how we can really live the kind of dynamics of being learners individually and collectively. And how can we make meaningful links between our program areas, encouraging people to explore links with the education team, to find mutually beneficial ground, fertile ground that is complementing what agendas are, and finding those interconnection points that really matter, that really mean that we can be bigger than the sum of our parts. So a big kind of welcome across the team to interact with us within our work in education and be part of that broader change programme to inspire a generation.